Welcome to Machine Tool Maniacs, the podcast where machining, fabrication, entrepreneurship, and bringing ideas to life collide. Around here, every story is a success story. I'm Matt, a second-generation manufacturer who's been in the shop since I was in diapers, learning the tools, the trade, and the people behind it all. Nearly everything in our daily lives is passed through a CNC machine. And we're here to spotlight the makers turning raw material into reality. Whether you're dreaming big or building bigger, this is your inside track to making it happen. Welcome back for part 2 with Brady of O.P.A. We finish up this episode discussing the journey to where he is today. His leverage of platforms like Xometry to optimize spindle time and keep flexibility with capacity in his shop, and some of his philanthropic endeavors. Where do you see your shop going in the future? Do you want to be a big job shop, or you want to always kind of remain more of a lean boutique type operation?
Yeah. I would say I don't see it going very, very far as far as that goes. Like I definitely see it staying pretty much the same size. I might add, I've been looking at adding an EDM to it, but I think I'll stick with 4 or 5 machines. Well, once again, this has kind of evolved over my years of running my own shop. I think at one point, had you asked me that, I'd be like, yeah, I want to be the next giant machine shop that has a 20-acre campus and hundreds of machines all lined up in a row with a bunch of guys going at it. That was certainly a dream at one time. I think as I've learned my own personality and my own like what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, that seems ludicrous to me now to even think that I could do that. And so I've kind of focused more on, I'd like to get to the point. So what I've seen is, I've really built my shop around, I do low quantity, difficult work, stuff that people are really asking a lot of their machinists. None of my work is really button pushing work. And that's why I can't really hire a ton of guys to do it. I have my helpers, and they come in and they're great guys, but they're not going to solve, edge of the envelope type problems. And so I've kind of moved away from that type of work because frankly, that's what everybody wants. Everyone wants a job that, you throw on a machine, you leave it running for a month and a half, and it just prints you money. Everyone wants that. So does China. That's it. You're in the shark pit for that, and that's where you're getting nickel and dimed. It comes down to, well, if this guy can cut it for 1 penny per widget first, he wins. Kind of deal. I didn't want to deal with any of that, so mine's definitely been set up around stuff that can't go overseas, prototyping, R&D. A lot of my customers are very, cutting edge. I just cut some parts for one of the electric vehicle or electric vertical takeoff and landing taxi cab companies. They're cool. Building they're building these automated. There's a handful of them.
Like Archer and stuff.
Yeah. And I don't cut for Archer, but I'm a competitor to Archer. Let's put it that way. Okay. Anyway, stuff like that where it's like, hey, they for the next 5-10 years, they're probably only going to make, under 100 of those vehicles kind of deal. They certainly don't want it going to China quite yet, because they want to get the jump. So it's that kind of stuff that I deal with, but they require, everything has to be, an SAE standard port or, an AS standard port or whatever it might be. They really require kind of the higher level stuff. So that's where I've really tried to build my shop to specialize. Hand in hand with that, I found that as I started moving towards that type of work, my shop rate just organically went through the roof. So like my per machine hour rate, it slowly went from 100, maybe even a hair under 100 sometimes if it was like a long runtime job that kept my machine busy for a long time. So it kind of crept up to 150, 120, 150. And then it was in the high 100s. And pretty soon I rounded that $200 per machine hour, level. And it just kind of exponentially grew to where now a lot of the jobs that I'm cutting are north of $500 per machine hour. I had one last week that was over $1,000 per machine hour. But it's because of the difficulty level. It's because it's like there's, you really need to think this through. You're probably going to make a handful of mistakes and have to scrap a few out, or the material's so valuable you can't scrap it out, so you have to, baby step into everything. Whatever it might be, it's not something that I can just turn over to, a 20-year-old grunt and be like, hey, hit the green button, every time this machine beeps. And so that's kind of what I've specialized in. So in coordination with that, I feel like where I'd like to see mine going is where I increase or maximize. I don't know if I can increase much more, but I maximize that. Like every hour that I'm in the shop, I'm making more money than I used to where I can come in, kind of condense and consolidate my time at the shop, make what I need to make, and then get the heck out and go enjoy life. And do it that way rather than like a concept of, oh, my machines are running nonstop. I got 3 shifts going, and it's a well-oiled machine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It just doesn't suit my personality. I'd love to get to the point where I can turn the lights off to my shop and say, hey, I'm good for the month. Like I got my scratch in my pocket. I'm happy. And shut the lights off and shut everything down. It doesn't cost me a lot, and I can go enjoy whatever my vacation might be, and come back next month and do it all again.
I think that's an honorable route, and especially with your ability to optimize your systems, I definitely see that as
That's
being
definitely key. Yeah, key to it. Yeah.
the direction you're headed. Well, that segues nicely into my next question. Accreditations. What accreditations have you pursued, and what did that involve?
Oh yeah, so there's been quite a few, especially having done military work. So on a personal level, I was going to say I am a Utah State Skills Certified Machinist, which means absolutely nothing. But that is my personal accreditation that I have. It basically means that I showed up to the class during high school most days that they asked me to show up to the class.
You got a
As
piece of
far as
paper.
exactly, yeah, and it looks really good on. It's something I can actually put on my resume. But as far as our company accreditations, we are ITAR registered, which that's your export controls. That is a big one nowadays, especially with the types of small scale stuff that I'm talking about, where you're dealing with satellite companies and defense contractors and things like that. The export controls are huge. That the export controls are what keep those parts going overseas. So if you can get into that world, you're more likely. I mean, it's just it's kind of intentionally designed to be that way. You want to be export control and ITAR. I don't want to say certified. People say certified, but that's a bit of a misnomer. You want to be ITAR registered because that allows you to take the work that's more likely to fall on a stateside job shop. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, and I've done I am AS 9100 compliant. I've looked at doing my certification and registration. For other companies I have worked for, I did get them certified and registered. Last I checked, and I mean it's depending on who you talk to, but the cost for that was around it was easing up to almost $20,000 for your upfront registration to use a registrar to get your AS 9100, and then at least a few $1,000s every year. What I found was most people really just wanted to make sure that I had a quality management system. So for them, compliant was more than enough. And they were just excited that I had any sort of quality management system to which I adhered. And so I did do that, but I've never really felt the need. Like I felt like if I went and hired a registrar to get my certification for that, I don't think that anything would really change on a day-to-day basis. But if you are doing military work, I would highly recommend using a registrar. They will walk you through the whole process. You can actually they'll create a whole quality manual for you. I did my own, but they'll do everything and hold your hand on that. It's I mean as is the ITAR. Like to do your ITAR registration, it's basically just pay your 2250 every year and you're on the list. It just comes
Mhm.
down to spending the money. But I would recommend that for anyone. If you're not looking at AS 9100, I definitely look at the ISO. Although I feel like like I say, for most of the work that is sticking around the US, you're better served with AS 9100. versus an ISO. AS9100 contains ISO and then adds the aerospace specific requirements to it. And that's the kind of work you're going to be doing if you're going after military or scientific and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I happen to know that you have experience using Xometry.
I do. Yeah.
What words of wisdom do you have around Xometry? Because I've
I
tried to
think I'm an
talk to people
outlier.
about it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think I'm a bit of an outlier. You and I have talked about it, and I think most of the salesmen, when they ask me, salesmen come in, they're like, hey, who are you cutting for? What are you doing? We like to share with them, especially. And yeah, almost every one of them without fail is like, really, you use Xometry and you like it? Like everyone we talk to hates it. I did. I have had a lot of success with Xometry. I will qualify that statement. I was thinking about this. You and I had spoken about it a bit. I will say that Xometry very much fit with the direction I was already going. And in fact, there were a handful of things with Xometry that really were things I really believed strongly, and I had never seen any other company kind of adhere to. So like just a dumb example. This is low level, but I remember one company I worked for a while ago. We were sitting in an engineering meeting where we were determining our engineering standards. So it was basically like, hey, as a group, all the engineers in the company, we agree that, this is how we're going to, write our symbols, and this is the font we're going to use, and whatever the standards might be, so that it's a shared language, and most companies do that. So we were sitting there and we were talking about models versus blueprints. And as the manufacturing guy, I told him, I was like, I believe strongly, like, we program off of models. Models should be your go-to. Like, that should be your primary source of data. And then prints really should just be used to draw attention to specific, like a tighter than normal tolerance or a thread, because threads often don't, depending on how you export your model, thread data often gets omitted. And depending on how they modeled it, you could be drilling a hole that ruins the part. But anyways, that was always that was a philosophy I had. And I tell people, people would scoff and be like, well, we've used blueprints forever. That's the way we should do it. And it's like, no, I see blueprints as a complete waste. If you just need a part and you want me to adhere, plus or minus 5 to every surface, great. Just give me the model and let's just assume that, And that was something that I really believe strongly. I tell my customers, like, dude, don't waste your time drawing me a blueprint. If it's not out of the ordinary, just send me the model, Well, then I bumped into Xometry, and the first thing they tell you is like, hey, 90% of your work, especially initially, you're only going to get a model, and just assume that it's plus or minus 5. And if it's got a thread, we'll send you a drawing. And if it's got a tight tolerance, we'll send you a drawing. But if not, you're just going to get a model. And so it's just like that resonated with me, because I was like, that's what I've been saying, and so there was a lot of stuff with Xometry where I was like, it kind of fed into my own beliefs, my own system, and in fact, reinforced them. And in some cases, accelerated my own changes where I was like, see, I knew I wasn't crazy. Like, other people believe this stuff too. And so that's kind of how I got started. I'll be the first to say that Xometry is probably not a slam dunk for everyone. Even just like the shops that are here around me, a lot of them want high quantity, long run time. They're great shops and they have their way of doing things. That's actually kind of why we're friends, because we don't view each other as competitors, because they're in a completely different world than I'm in, For those kind of shops, they're probably gonna hate Xometry. They're not gonna like it. Xometry really forces you to have, I'd say, insanely fast turnarounds. I mean, Matt, you've been around the world, the machining world enough. If you were just to randomly guess, the average of the shops you go into, what's their current lead time? What would you say that most of your shops that you walk into are quoting for a lead time?
Months.
Exactly. Yeah. Most shops that I talk to, like, literally, I have my local customers that are pulling work from other local shops and being like, hey, Brady, can you handle this? Because they're telling us 8 weeks, That's very normal. Yeah. 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. That's very normal.
Absolutely.
Xometry, man, if you get a job over like 10 days out, even 10 days is shocking. Most of the work that you are going to be doing is due within a week. Much of it is due within 3 or 4 days of doing it. That, like I said, that feeds perfectly into the system that I've built, where it's like, oh yeah, I don't need, days for my accounting department to generate paperwork. I don't need my estimator to do that, whatever it might be. I've streamlined that. So it really suits what I do. But I think a lot of shops will be like, oh man, that just does not fit with my system. I think that's fine. But for me, yeah, Xometry worked really well. Man, I'm trying to think how we found it. Oh, I know exactly how we found them. We had bought a couple machines from a shop up north in Logan, and he had told us about them. And he was kind of on the downhill. He was getting out of it. So he's like, yeah, he's like, they used to be awesome, but they changed their rules. They're not as cool anymore. And then my right-hand man at the time got on, I think, Reddit. And he's like, he would follow the machinist subreddit there, which I'm not on social media or anything. I had no idea, but he's like, dude, he's like, that Xometry company, like, it's come up before. People talk about it on the subreddit and stuff. I was like, well, tell me about it, man. Like, what's going on? So we dug into it a little bit. We really drug our feet as far as like doing their sample part and getting onboarded and stuff. Like, I don't know if I really recognized its value off the bat. But then kind of as I shifted gears and was going through my reinvention, I was like, well, hey, work is work is work. Might as well reach out to them. I've always been a big fan of diversity. I hate like, for a while when we were doing military work early on at O.P.A, we literally had like one customer that accounted for like 94% of our revenue. And that's scary because, that guy gets hit by a bus or whatever it might be, you're in deep doo-doo. My goal was like, I mean, ideally, I'd love to get to a point where no customer accounted for more than 10%. I think that's like kind of the industry standard of a safe, like a diversified portfolio. I'm not there by any means, but I certainly wanted more diversity than just 2 or 3 major companies. I would say like I have about 4 like top dog customers, including Xometry being one of them. And I will say they each account for approximately an equal proportion of my revenue. That's about as good as I've gotten. I mean, each of them is probably 20 to 25% of my revenue, which is still a little dangerous, but it's better than all your eggs in one basket. So yeah, sure. I decided to try it. I jumped into it. I got onboarded. It was an eye-opening experience. But this comes back to Matt, like I had the years of experience of like, oh man, I don't know how to sell work. I don't know, I spend so much time quoting and estimating, and half the time my quote doesn't even get accepted. And I just wasted hours of my life, quoting something that I lost for maybe 10 cents a part or something. Who knows what it was. That I'd always had that frustration because I'd seen it. So when Xometry came on, they're like, hey, dude, here's your page full of offers. Like, you wake up in the morning and there's, whatever, 20, 40, 60 offers sitting there, and you just scroll down them and it's like, yes, no, whatever, you can push back on it, but it's like, I'm not wasting any of my time. If my machine shop's full, I don't look on that page, and I'm not wasting time. Whereas like beforehand with normal customers, even if my machine shop's full, if a customer comes and sends you an RFQ, you've got to quote it. Like, they're your customer. You got to take care of them, Mm-hmm. And so I just saw a lot of what Xometry did made sense in, like I say, in my model that I had built. It might not work for others. And so, yeah, I got onboarded, and I'll be the first to say it. I'll refrain from my usual blue language that I use in the machine shop, but it was a pile of crap. A lot of the work up front, like the first month was just, I mean, hardcore crap. Like you barely covered your bills. It's like maybe, you pay after you pay for material, you were maybe, netting $40-$50 per machine hour, which was well below. I mean, my shop rate per machine hour was 100 or more, minimum. So it really wasn't that great, but I really saw a couple things. I saw that their way of doing things really fit well with what I had turned my shop into. And then the second part, I really feel like what they did solves one of the major problems I see with the generational divide in manufacturing. So I'm in the generation where they told us pretty hardcore, do not get into manufacturing. Don't do it. It's bad. China's taking everything. Don't waste your time. You're going to be unemployed. And so there's a weird dead spot, literally like the program I came out of in high school, they canceled it 2 years later. Like, I was one of the last classes to come out of it.
Mm.
And then they canceled it, and now there is no metal shop at my old high school. There is nothing that these kids can do. So there's this weird chasm of like, you've got like the 50-plus-year-old dudes that are still old school. They're the shop managers. They're aging out at this point. They're starting to get older. They want to retire. And then luckily now we're starting to see a pushback on college where not everyone believes that college is everything it was cracked up to be. And there's kind of a turning back to the trades and vocational learning. But there's this weird chasm in the middle. And it's really hard to bridge that gap. So when I was thinking, and I don't want to sound like one of those old dudes, it's like, oh, this generation nowadays. But like one of the things I've noticed with younger guys, like, even my grunts and stuff that I work with, they hate talking to people. And I totally get it. Like I remember when I was in high school, like, building I jacked up my Jeep, like I built a Jeep, and I would be so afraid to go in and like try to order a specialized part because I didn't know what I was talking about. Right. So it's like I go in there and I'm like, I need a lift kit for my Jeep. Well, what height do you want? What do you want? This, and they start asking, you feel like it's like a form of gatekeeping almost, where you're like, dude, I don't know. Exactly. Like, tell me what your differential is. And it's like, I don't know, but I really want to do this, but I'm terrified of you. Can you imagine some kid nowadays? You can envision exactly the kid I'm talking about. Walks in and talks to some grizzled machine shop manager, and he's just like, "Hey, I had this idea for a part. I sketched it out on a napkin." And this machine shop manager, grizzled guy, is going to chew him out and rip him a new one. That's terrifying, and it's wrong, frankly. And I've always tried to bridge that gap with the younger generation. And suddenly I see Xometry where it's like, dude, this kid can be sitting in the safety of his, in front of his computer, not have to talk to anyone. He just uploads this model that frankly might be one of the, most poorly designed parts I've ever seen in my life, but he gets an immediate quote on it. And then it comes over to me. I cut it. And I mean, I charge him an arm and a leg for his stupid design that I had to, really get creative to cut. That'd be my one recommendation to everyone using Xometry: stop drawing deburred radii on your parts. Okay. We know you want the freaking parts deburred. Okay. Don't draw a radius on the corners. We know how to deburr parts anyway.
Yeah.
But he draws it up. I cut it. I drop it in the FedEx and he gets his part. And we were able to help each other without him feeling awkward coming into my shop, without me I'm sure I'd be a fairly nice guy, but like, I'd side eye him a little bit. It's like, hey, this is a dumb design, dude. He sensed that one way or another from me. I definitely would try to be polite, but we can avoid all that. And so I really see Xometry as a huge opening, and Xometry and companies like Xometry as like a huge wedge to help us get in between and bridge that gap between the generations.
I agree. So how does it work on Xometry? It's like a score, or how do you gain experience points on there to get some of the more premium level work?
I wish I could answer the question. They are kind of a black box. So they do have two scores that they reveal to you, which are your on time scores and your quality score. And it's kind of changed over. I've been with them for, I don't know, a couple years. They've changed their metrics a little bit, but that's really all you see. What you see on your end as the partner is what they call them, but the machine shop basically is that score, and then they compile the two into like your partner success score, I think they call it. They used to have like a communication one, which I sucked at, because like they'd always ask me like, I get a part that's due in a week and they'd send me an email. It's like, is this part going to be delivered on time? And it's like, I think so. Like everything's on track until it's derailed. Like they're always like, we just want to make sure you're on track to deliver this. It's like, well, yeah, it's going to be on track until it's off the track. Like, I don't know how to better describe that to you.
Yeah.
Like, yes, a week before the due date, I assume it's going, like, yes, I'm an optimist. I think I'm going to get it done. I will tell you the day of if I'm going to miss that due date. And so I would always fail on the communication score because I wouldn't respond. They got rid of that. And so now it's really just boils down to quality in that. I do know, well, at least I sense, I kind of sense with them that if there must be some sort of customer feedback from the customer side. I don't know what that is. I've never seen it. But I'm guessing a customer, much like an Uber driver, can be like, oh, this guy, this shop was a 4, this shop was a 5, whatever it might be. Because then I do know if you do a good job on the work and there's repeat work, you are more likely to get that, and they're more likely to make it valuable to you right off the bat. The second leg of that is you can always, I think this is what people don't get, you can always push back on pricing. So like they can ask for a part, which I mean, literally this week, I pushed back on like 20 jobs, and 5 of them, Xometry came back and said, "You're right. No one else will cut it for cheaper. We'll take your price." So I basically named my price on those 5 jobs. You can always push back and say, like, I'll do it, but you miss something or it's not worth it to me. They might say, well, never mind, someone else, will cut it for cheaper. But a lot of that stuff comes back. And so a lot of the work that I get, it's my price basically that they're paying. And that's where I've also really focused on like poorly designed parts that are hard to manufacture that most machinists are going to look and be like, well, that's a stupid design. Oh, you're going to need a key seat cutter or a lollipop cutter because you got to undercut or do something stupid that was just poor design. That clearly, like, whoever designed this didn't know how a CNC machine works. But I'll grab it and be like, hey, you want that cut? Yeah, you pay for my lollipop cutter. You pay for the 3D milling time. You pay for it to go on my 5-axis. I'll cut that stupid design for you. And that's the kind of stuff that I think that a lot of people overlook. And they just kind of look at the raw, like the first offer, and they're like, well, that's garbage. I don't want anything to do. But if you can push back on some stuff, you can do the hard stuff, and you can streamline your overall process so that you're spitting parts out fast. I think there's a lot of success to be had.
Nice. So you mentioned previously that in the beginning, the work is crappy.
Yeah.
For lack of better terms.
I think that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
So how do you get to the point where the work isn't crappy?
It just kind of happened organically for me. Like I just started, we were fairly well established when we started with Xometry as far as like I had my customer base. So I was paying my bills. Xometry was not, it was gravy at that point. Like it really wasn't something that I needed. And that helps a lot because it's kind of like, hey, let's grab a part. Like, oh, the lathe came open a little earlier than we thought. So the lathe has 4 open hours. Well, grab a Xometry part, because even though you might only be making $30-$40 per machine hour, that's better than zero. Like right now, the lathe's going to make $0. So it's like, hey, we're all here. We're all working because we're running the mills. The lathe is sitting. Yeah, grab a part and do it. So we just kind of put work through, and it was kind of like, oh, no one's really happy with the work. It's not super nice, but like get it in, get it out fast. It's pretty nice because most of the low level work, like I say, they just give you a model. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. If you're like us, where you have some materials sitting on the shelf, like just grab your aluminum part, like grab something that fits the bar stock that you had an overage on your last job, that like that other customer paid for that aluminum, right? You ended up having a 3-foot drop off the end of it. Use that, grab that material, use it for Xometry, throw it on a machine that was otherwise empty, and you'll be fine. Now, if you're looking to do Xometry right off the bat as like, okay, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to dump my life savings into a Haas machine or whatever it might be, and I'm going to put it in my garage, and I'm going to, start making a salary tomorrow on my own. Yeah, you're screwed. Do not use Xometry. You will rue the day that you ever did that. Like, you are doomed. But if you were in like my case, where it's like, well, hey, let's see if we can't develop this guy into a new customer, which that's really what you do with all customers. Very few customers come along and like, congratulations, here's $20,000 worth of work every month, like on day one. That's never going to happen. You have to develop it. They're going to try you out. They're going to see how you are. Xometry is exactly the same. It's just on an accelerated basis. And so we kind of just chewed through it for like, I don't know, a month, 2 months. And suddenly we started getting like, they color code them. So like, if you receive work that you push back on, it turns orange. There's an orange flag that says, hey, we'll go ahead and give you what you asked for. If it's repeat work, or what they call it, there's some that's exclusive work that's only sent to you. And that's usually repeat work or a repeat customer that you've dealt with before. That turns purple. So we started seeing about 6 weeks in, we started seeing those purple flags where that customer, I don't know if the customer wanted us again, or Xometry said, well, hey, this guy already knows how to cut these parts. Let's send it to him. But whatever it was, we started noticing those colored flags pretty, like I said, about six weeks in on it. And that's kind of when we started seeing the that's where it got back up to our machine per hour cost, and then started exceeding it. And now, I mean, almost all the work, I think I've got 10 or 11 open jobs right now with Xometry. Well over half of them are feedback jobs where I ask for more money, and I think 3 of them are repeat work or exclusive work offers that I was sent. Very little of what I currently have was just grabbed off the job board. And that's just, I think, a function of time. I mean, it's not rocket science. I would say this with any customer, make high quality parts, deliver them on time, and be fair about your price, and you're going to win at the end of the day. Like, that's all you need to succeed as a machine shop, with any customer. And I think with Xometry, it's just a lot more codified. Those things are a lot more codified, and there's a system to track it rather than just like a general customer that you have to treat right and get them good parts.
Yeah, I mean, another way to look at the whole Xometry situation, you say it's going to suck in the beginning and it's going to take time. But so is any other pursuit, right? So
Yeah,
if you're marketing, if you're out there hunting for customers, if you're trying to get work in the shop and you're hustling, you're on the streets, that's going to suck too. And that's going to
yeah,
take time and that's going to take effort, right? So
yeah,
it's kind of a pick your battle type thing. Do you want to waste your time and effort on the streets trying to find work, or maybe just making crappy parts on Xometry until you can get your foot, a good foothold and maybe get a better rating or whatever, however the
yeah.
system works. So
Well, and I would
definitely
say
some
too,
things.
yeah, I was gonna say adding to that a little bit. I think that there's a lot of benefits to Xometry that people overlook, especially old school machinists overlook. But one is, I mean, this is a prime example, but like, so I have 3 big local customers that are like my local guys. I've been with them for like 5 to 10 years, depending on which one. They're nice customers. I love them and stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to take care of them. We've built this long-term relationship, and it's taken me years to get where I am with them, and it can all be undone very quickly. Now,
Mhm.
luckily, they're all pretty cool. Where it's like we realize there's a give and take. Where if I bid a little too high on something, they'll be like, "Hey, Brady, can you come down a bit? Like, you're not the lowest, but can you meet us halfway?" But then they also realize that some jobs, it's like I get to win on those. Like I get to take a little extra, and there's a give and take, and there's a mutual respect. Those are how actually all of my local customers are. I love them all. But like when they call me on a Friday evening, or when I want to go camping out in the West Desert, or, go riding or whatever, it's like they call me on a Friday night and it's like, Brady, we're in a lot of trouble. Engineer so and so screwed up. Can you please bail us out? Like, we need this part by Monday, or we're going to lose a government contract. You have to step up. Like, they're your customer. Like, you have to take care of them, right? There's nothing you can do about that. And luckily, like that doesn't happen all the time, but you have to do that. That does not happen with Xometry. Like when I went to Hawaii, that's when I wrote my code. It's like we went to Hawaii for a week, and it's like I don't get on Xometry. And I know that those customers are taken care of, and it might not be with me, but like I know that when I get back, great, I can just turn it back on and grab the work I need. If like I just brought on a new customer a couple months ago, and it's like he demanded a lot of my attention. So I just kind of turned down my Xometry that month, and I don't grab quite as many jobs. You can't really do that with other companies. One thing that you especially can't do with other companies is say, "Hey, I got an empty lathe," and call them up and be like, "Hey, please send me lathe work. Like, I know you might not need it, but like my lathe is empty. How do I fill it up?" Whereas you absolutely can do that with Xometry, where you can pick and choose and say, "Hey, the 5 axis is low, or the 3 axis is low, or hey, I need something to run on the Haas that I never use." You can pick and choose with that. You can't do that with other customers. And so I think there's a lot of things like that. And then, not to mention, the most overlooked, how much freaking time do we spend as shop owners or in our corporation bidding and quoting and trying to sell work? Like I easily save 5 to 15 hours a week not quoting anymore for Xometry, where I can just grab it and be done. And yeah, I might lose $1 or $2. I might say, well, hey, Xometry's price isn't quite what I want, but it's like, click, done. Like, I mean, there's a savings in that. Would I rather
Mhm.
spend 30 minutes building a quote, putting it into my bookkeeping software, emailing it over? and then getting there, then maybe winning it, maybe not? Or would I rather just say, you know what, Xometry, yeah, you might be stiffing me a little bit, but you know what, you made it easy on me. Click, done. So
Yeah.
there's a lot like that I think people need to value all that in and be like, yeah, I might not be making top dollar per cycle hour, but once again, if you zoom out and that whole administrative picture, that whole operations picture that you have,
Hmm.
I think they win.
No, those are all great points. Yeah, very true. Great for, like you said, food for thought. Get yourself a couple of good, reliable customers, and then maybe start looking at it for filler work, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so you're not maxing out your capacity with, just trying to get mainstream customers. Get your capacity up to 60%, and
Yep.
then try to use Xometry to fill up the 40, or whatever metric you would like to use.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
no, and like I say, it was crucial a few months ago when I had, I mean, I won't mention who it is. They're a very famous YouTube star here locally. That he came over. We had a mutual connection through Renishaw, and he came into my shop with just a ton of ideas. He had kind of been looking for a shop just like me. And I've been looking for a customer just like him. It was honestly a match made in heaven, and they're just like 5 minutes up the street from me.
yeah,
And we just really were, kindred spirits and stuff. Um, and that, but he came in with tons of work up front where it's like, oh man, I need this, I got this idea, I need you to do engineering and development, and we got to do prototyping, we got patents we got to file on, a lot of stuff up front. you know Luckily, like you say, my other customers filled 75% of my workload. I was able just to be like, okay, give me a week, let me get my Xometry mopped up, and I'm going to make sure I don't grab anything else from Xometry. But I probably took 3 or 4 weeks off from Xometry while I got him established, while I got him taken care of and got him stabilized and leveled off. And then I'm able to turn it back up. That's huge. That's something I think people don't see.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, moving on, I happen to know that you have done some philanthropic community stuff with the Boy Scouts that I think is really cool. And I just wanted to give you the chance to talk about what you did. And I just think this is a great way to encourage interest in the industry for the
Yeah.
youth. Right. And so,
I'll be honest. I think most of this stuff, if we really zoomed out as an industry, it is a totally selfish motivation that we should have about this kind of stuff. Like, I mean, once again, I don't want to sound like the crotchety old guy, but like, we can sit there and bellyache about, oh, these kids nowadays, they don't know how to do anything, they can't make anything, they don't do anything with their hands. Like, yeah, whose fault is that? Like, it's us, dude. Like, we're the ones that need to introduce them. Like,
absolutely.
if a kid doesn't know how to change his oil, who showed that? Like, you've got, I mean, how did I learn? My dad showed me how to change my oil, or like, someone taught me something. Like, that's how I learned to shoot a gun, throw a fishing, cast a fishing pole, do whatever. I was taught it by someone.
Mhm.
And it's like we didn't have the internet, and it's easy to just be like, oh, let them learn on the internet or that. I mean, it's on us, man. And so it's like if we think that kids aren't getting into manufacturing or aren't innovative, that's on us,
Absolutely.
as a society. So and once again, this, from my personal experience, I had a lot of mentors in the industry, outside of the industry. I'll give props real quick. I mean, we haven't name dropped anyone, but Kevin Tumia that just passed away here locally. Anyone that's in the Salt Lake area knows Kevin. Um, he was my mentor, man. Like, I apprenticed under him for a year and a half. So many lessons that I've learned came from him because he took the time to put up with a harebrained high school kid in his shop, and he took me from the grunt that mops the floor to a legitimate manual machinist, because he cared about it.
Hmm.
I probably have 10 examples. That Kevin was my guy in machining, but like there's probably 10, 15 examples of just, men, women, adults that taught me something, that helped me become who I am, and that I hold their lessons close. So you and I talked, I came from scouting. I'm an Eagle Scout by the skin of my teeth. I barely got it. But I enjoyed it. And look, so many of the men that were involved in that taught me not just scouting lessons, but life lessons, professional lessons, you name it. And so I feel indebted at the very least, but I think as a society, we should feel pretty indebted because whether you think it or not, adults helped you along the way. And I think
Absolutely.
we owe it to ourselves. And like I say, let's get these kids thinking of stupid ideas, and then they're going to need a machinist to cut it for them. Like at the end of the day, this is, like I say, it's selfish to do it. Um, so I've worked with the youth programs in scouting, and then just outside of scouting as well, to just for everything. I mean, camping and all that kind of stuff. But I'm always very open with the boys and the youth in general. I work sometimes with we'll do combined groups and stuff like that. And I'm always very open with like, hey, like I went to college, but like that, there's other routes, and maybe balance the two and learn some skills. And if you want to learn how to fix a lawnmower, call me and I'll help you out. Some of the kids will get, one of the kids got like an old beat up mini bike, an old gas power, which I've seen so many of those stupid electric bikes. I was so pleased to see a gas powered. It was an old Pooch, and he's like, I don't know how to fix this, and I was like, dude, come down to the shop, bring it down, let's clean your car. I'm gonna teach you how to clean a carburetor. It could be stupid stuff like that you're teaching these kids. But I'm always very vocal with the kids about like what I do, how much I love it. Like I love machining, and I remember the moment that I fell in love with it, and I try to share that with them every chance I can get. And I just sit back and like I had shared that example, which I'll share here again, on the activity that we did building the throwing axes. That was not my idea. Okay. I had told the kids, hey, if you guys ever think of something stupid you want to come down and build at my shop, tell me. And I'm on board, man. Like, I'm basically a 14-year-old with money in his pocket. Like, like that's how I work.
Yeah.
And one of the boys came and he's like, hey, I saw this design online for a throwing axe made completely out of steel, so it's nice and durable. It's real simple. He showed it to me, and I was like, his name was Brennan. And I was like, Brennan, man, you hit the nail on the head. Let's do it. And let's do it as an activity for everyone. And so we ended up having, it was a lot of fun. We had about 15 boys. And basically all I did was I kind of modified his design a little bit to make it more manufacturable, and cheaper for me. But I just took some, quarter-inch thick, steel. I think, just some, cheap carbon steel that I had laying around, cut it into rectangles. I can't remember, about 4x6 or so, punched a couple holes in them, that were hold down holes, but they could also be kind of decorative. They aligned with it. And then basically each of the kids, they all came in. We had some stations set up. We kept a lot of them outside of the shop so we could control them. And they were like playing field games out in my parking lot. And then one at a time, we'd have them come in. They'd sit at the machine. We had an adult there, obviously. They could bolt down this piece of metal. They'd hit the go button. Obviously, I'd programmed it. And it, cut the outer profile of an axe head. And then I think I had a 120-degree chamfer mill, like a real shallow guy. Put the edge on. I mean, that probably wouldn't be how I would make an axe if I were using it. But anyway, it did the job. And they flip it over. They do the other side. And then we had another adult running the bandsaw. Actually, it might not have been an adult. It might have been my son. But anyway, they were running the bandsaw, cutting off some, 3/4-inch pipe to about, I don't know, 12 inches, 14 inches. And then I was over at the weld station, and we'd get them all up in their welding garb. And I'd be there with my mask on, and they could, with the MIG, they'd tack the head onto the handle where they wanted, with 2 tacks, and then I'd run a bead for them. I'd take the welder and run the bead so it actually stuck together. And then they would go outside. We had some logs set up, and they'd throw them. And we were actually up at camp about a month ago, and a lot of those boys still had their throwing axes and stuff like that.
And treasure those.
Yeah, and there were a lot of kids, and it was cool because it's like they made it themselves. We've had activities where, I have a laser, and I always tell the boys, like, hey, when you guys get a new pocket knife, come down and you can laser it. All of the boys that I've ever worked with, they have something with their name engraved on it, whether it's just a chunk of metal or something. So I try to, show them, like, because, you think about it, Matt, like, you and I come from the industry, but like for a normal kid, they don't even know what a machinist is. Like, if you tell them, like, how do you make this metal part? How does the water pump on my car get manufactured? They don't even know. Many adults don't know.
Yeah.
Like my wife, when she introduces us and says that I'm a machinist, half the people think I drive like a Caterpillar tractor on a construction site or something. Like they don't even know what I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the more that we can expose kids to it and be like, hey, this is it. Like, this is how we go from a dream to a piece of metal to a functional part. Like, this is how it works. that suddenly it gets their juices flowing, you know. And I don't know if I told you, I know I was mentioning it to another guy just a couple of days ago, but it's like, I think 3D printers were grossly overhyped, whatever 5 or 6 years ago when they became mainstream. And it used to piss me off. I have neighbors left and right. Oh, you're in manufacturing, but I bought a 3D printer and they want to talk to me about it like I cared. And I'm just like, yeah, sorry, like you're playing in the sandbox, man. Whereas, I'm digging the hole. And it really bothered me. But like a lot of those found their way into junior highs and high school. And as much as I can bemoan 3D printers and their lack of utility sometimes, and just how much stuff actually costs, like if people add it up, how grossly inefficient those things are compared to machining. But whatever, you're like, I won't get into that. But those ended up, and kids suddenly would like, their teacher would teach them, download this model, throw it in the printer, and make it. And pretty soon the kid would start asking himself, well, I want to change that model a little bit. And they'd have to learn how to do that. And then pretty soon they'd be making their own models. Yeah. And then eventually they're going to hit a point where it's like, well, hey, this is cool, but I need something out of metal. I need something real. I need something with a tight fit or high precision or whatever it might be. And that's when they're coming to people like us. And that's the trajectory. And so it's like a lot of people are quick to say, oh, kids aren't creative. Kids aren't innovative. Kids are stupid. I'm not saying it's completely baseless. I've seen plenty with my own kids where I think they're stupid, but like this is where it comes from. It absolutely exists. Just like from previous generations, we might have been motorheads, we might have, tinkered on our motorcycles, or like I say, clean carburetors, it's just a different format now. Like it's a different world that they're in, but that creativity and that desire to build, it absolutely exists at exactly the same levels that it's always existed.
It does. I mean, and it's a good basis to maybe get kids to start thinking, hey, where does stuff come from?
Yeah.
Who's making this? It doesn't.
Yep.
It's not just rocks that roll into one end of a big building and finished goods come out the other, right? There's people in there doing stuff day in and day out.
Well, and I think a big one too, along that line, with it is, that then spurs them on. That's what gets them interested, and that's how we fill up the ranks. Behind is when they start seeing those things, and that's where they dream. And like I said, that's that small scale stuff, those stupid ideas, that innovative, that new stuff. That's what's going to feed stateside machine shops for the next 50 years. Like we're not like I know that this is kind of a politically charged topic, but it's like, if you mindlessly put together air conditioners doing the exact same motion every day, and anyone with a week's worth of training can do it, that's not coming back. Okay. Like that's not ever coming back on shore, right? If someone in a cheaper country can do it, that's not going to happen. But where American manufacturing really can see a renaissance is in that small scale, those innovative things where it's like, hey, we only need 100 of them, or it's so top secret we can't send it over to China, or whatever the reason might be for why they can't get it made in China. But it's like, hey, if you need one little thing made and you need it in a couple days just to test fit it, and it needs to be made quick and correctly, that China and overseas in general is never going to work for that. Like that's just never going to be their forte. And if they do start doing it, it's going to cost exactly the same as it costs in the US. So to me, like I say, it should be selfish for us as an industry to nurture the innovation in these kids, because that's exactly the work that's going to save us.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, it's been great. So as far as closing thoughts, any last bits of advice you would give out to somebody thinking about starting their own shop or in the beginning stages?
Yes. And I will, first of all, I gotta give credit to my wife, because I actually, when I mentioned that we were going to do this, and I was like, I wonder if they'll ask about like advice. I was like, what should I say about stuff? Because usually when people ask me, like the kids I work with, or like neighbors and stuff like that, when they're like, oh, what advice would you give to people starting their own business? I'd say don't. Like that is my advice to most everybody, is don't do it. But I was telling my wife, so that a lot of this is my wife's 2 cents, which that's who you and I talked about it last time you were over, that it's like, I actually feel like most people could run their own business. It's the spouse that really determines whether or not you can do it. Because at the end of the day, I really feel like the spouse is the one that pays the highest price for it, and your spouse really needs to be cut from a certain cloth in order for you to be self-employed. And my wife certainly is. I mean, whether she liked it or not, it happened, and she did a great job. But one thing I thought about that I really, this might sound, I don't know if draconian or extreme is the right word, um, but I would highly recommend to anyone that is serious about starting their own shop or their own business in general is, first and foremost, spend as much time learning on someone else's dime. Like, let them, make the mistakes working for someone else. I know that you want to get out there. I know that you think that, it's a waste of your time and that you can do better. You're probably like 19 years old and you think you know everything. I did too. You don't. And spend as much time as you can learning. Try to go to small companies, try to be that renaissance man that understands the HR, the admin, and the technical. Like I say, try to be all three of those personalities of the technician, the administrator or manager, and the entrepreneur. Try to gain as much there. What I would legitimately do, like I would this, like I say, it sounds extreme. I would, for 1 year, work 2 jobs, full-time jobs, 2 full-time jobs, Monday through Friday. Get your butt out of bed. You're going to work 16 hours, get a night job. Maybe it's not quite a full-time, but put in 75 to 80 hours a week for an entire year. That sounds nuts, and it sounds like I'm exaggerating. You will be doing that for at least the first few years. And you will be doing that in some form or another most of your time as a self-employed person. It might not be 80 hours a week, but it will be having to go into work at the most inopportune moments, or when you're like, I try to take vacations regularly. The 3 days before a vacation and the 3 days after a vacation are the worst days for me. Like, I do not go home. Half the time when we went to Hawaii, I had literally like worked all night. I came home, I showered, I grabbed my bag and got on an airplane. Like, that happens almost every time I try to go on vacation. I have to work overnight the night before to get everything, worked out. So that working 2 jobs, pretty much full-time jobs if you can, for an entire year. If at the end of the year, you do not have one salary socked away in savings, or you are dealing with mental health crises, or your spouse is threatening to divorce you, or you feel like you don't have a social life, you cannot run your own business. And you need to do all those things. If you work 2 jobs and at the end of the year you have $500 in savings, then you are not disciplined enough with financially to have your own business. If your mental health is struggling, which is completely understandable, you're not cut out for it. Like, honestly, I think you might have to be a little bit broken in order to start your own business, like mentally, and just be able to be like, la la la, I'm in happy land, even though like everything in the world is on fire around you. You need to be able to do that. Your spouse, your loved ones, like whatever format your social life takes, they need to be able to deal with it as well. And like I say, if at the end of the day you're like, man, I've gone this whole year and I'm so, I don't get to go out, I don't get to meet people. Maybe you're not married and you're like, I can't go on dates. I'm always working. It's not right for you at that stage of your life. If you can't do that and see those not benefits, but see that outcome, you are not cut out for it. And so that would be my advice to anyone that's seriously considering doing it. And I know they're going to laugh like, oh, you're trying to scare us off. Like, dude, like I have worked over 100 hours at least 30 weeks in my life. Like, I mean, like it happens all the time. And like, even when I think like, oh, everything's stabilized, now I'm kind of living the cool owner life. And I'm taking off to Hawaii. I'm going on a long weekend, whatever it might be. Just as many of those instances as I have, I still have those weeks where it's like, oh crap, what did I do? I took on way too much work. I mean, I just got a PO 2 days ago that came out of left field. I didn't even know it was coming. I never quoted it. It's from one of my local customers, so I can't say no to it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I just exceeded my monthly revenue. I just exceeded it by about $15,000. now I've got to figure out how to absorb that. And the only way that I can
Wow.
absorb that is to put in more hours. So it still happens. So I am not exaggerating when I tell you, hey, if you can go a full year working 2 jobs, and then also you're learning twice as much, try to get those 2 jobs in the field in which you want to, start your business. And that's just more experience, more contacts that you're making. So that would, I mean, it sounds extreme, but that would be my advice.
Well, that's good advice. My wife owns a business. I see what it takes.
You see
It's
it. Yeah.
It doesn't. You know what? I don't think it matters what type of business it is.
Nope.
I mean, maybe there's some type of business out there, but I think even in your head, if you think it's the easiest business in the world, it takes time. Even social media influencers, they
Oh,
are.
yeah.
It's not like they just whip out their phone and cowboy it. You see what they go through, and they're hiring professional filmographers and
Yep.
scripting, and it's unbelievable. So
Well, and I would add just exactly kind of along what you were saying and stuff like that is that like you say, Instagram, like I'm not on social media, but yeah, I get it. It's like, that's that filtered view. I'd say even before that, a lot of people only would see a small business owner at the tail end of their career, where it's like, oh, dude, that guy like buys a new car every year and he goes on vacation. And like, I mean, there are some perks, like for sure. Like my wife loves it when like she gets hung up somewhere and she's like, hey, can you go pick up the kids from kindergarten, in the middle of the day on a Tuesday? Well, sure, of course I can. Like that's one of the perks. People see those perks and they focus too much on that. You typically don't see when that shop manager or that small business owner was there on a Sunday at 8 p.m. or working an overnight or sleeping on the couch in his office, or like no one, they don't glorify that. And so we kind of had the Instagram filtering and the social media filter, like that existed even before. And so just be very, very cautious, like would be my advice too. Like everyone focuses on the good, like, oh man, that's so cool. You travel, you do this. Trust me, like it evens out. Like they went through so much crap that they're never going to tell you about. And so that's why I try my best to try to dissuade people and like show them the ugly side of self-employment.
yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today, and make sure you follow me on TikTok or Instagram at Machine Tool Maniac with underscores in between each of those words. And thanks for joining us on the podcast today. And once again, this is where every story is a success story.